Welcome to another episode of Straight Lines. I'm Tim Neiman. This is where life lessons meet leadership, where business gets a dugout seat, and where baseball gives us more than box scores. It gives us blueprints. Whether you're managing a team, building a brand, or just trying to lead yourself better, you're in the right place because here on Straight Lines, we believe the shortest distance between purpose and progress is truth, clarity, and action. Today on the show, I'm joined by someone who's built more than just a brand. He's built a mindset. Andre Butler is the founder of Graveyard Mentality, a movement rooted in discipline, resilience, and the belief that you have to work hard for your goals long after the lights go out. Andre's journey is about more than entrepreneurship. It's about pushing past doubt, overcoming setbacks, and creating a lifestyle that challenges people to be their best. In this conversation, we'll talk about his personal story, how graveyard mentality came to life, the challenges of building something from the ground up, and what it really takes to keep moving forward when most people would stop. So, whether you're chasing a dream, building a business, or just looking for a spark to keep going, you're going to get a lot from today's episode. Let's dive into this with Andre Butler. Andre, great to have you, my friend. Great to see you again, and I appreciate you coming on with me.
Thanks for having me, Coach. It's always great, and it's good to get the band back together because it's obviously I've always been a fan. Love what you're getting into because it's no surprise, and it's one of those things where you keep helping people no matter what you're doing. So I'm excited to be out here.
Well, I really appreciate that. I try to transition from coaching, so I don't miss it so much anymore, to something that I can kind of figure out what I want to do. Kind of the same as you're doing right now. So, where are you physically sitting tonight? You're at home?
So I'm at home in Ackworth, Georgia, just right by Lake Point, north of Atlanta area. We moved out here about coming up on 3 years. Yeah, it'll be 3 years now. We've moved here from the Pennsylvania area. First time I've ever lived anywhere else outside of Pennsylvania full time. Not really on purpose. The career and the job just kind of always taken me around PA because of obviously my roots but it's been a really really cool move thus far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about those roots a little bit. So, growing up when you're a younger guy, um, high school, and then, of course, your college, and then you got into some coaching and you were a pretty darn good coach. But, you know, with a family and married, it's hard to make ends meet sometimes. So you've hung in there, and we'll get into the graveyard mentality as well. But, talk about those early days.
Yeah, it's kind of something you get into it, and I had my first opportunity at Swarthmore College with Coach Matt Midkiff, who I played for, and it's one of those things where like you love it. You're young, right? Like, and everything about it's great. You get the gear, you get everything, you get to stretch the guys out, in warm ups, and obviously you get to realize what you don't know. And I know for sure my first year, I realized a lot what I didn't know. So that was kind of the cool thing is to embrace the challenge of learning more about the game. And was with Swarthmore and like, hey, I'll stay here for a while. I got my ID swipe, like, let me get comfortable. And then sure enough, the guys at University of Penn, Coach Santello, Coach Yurkow, were like, hey, we've got an opening here as a volunteer position. You want to come over here? And I'm like, I haven't even coached in the game yet. Never coached in the game. I was with Swarthmore for the fall season, and then here I am in the Ivy League, and I'm like, wow, like, Division III player from Eastern University, and now getting the opportunity to coach Division I for the city that I grew up in, Philadelphia. Like, this isn't supposed to happen, right? There's no way that I should be in this role, but by the grace of God, he said, no, here you go. Here's your spot. And it's just cool to see the way things spiral in your career. We all think or have thought at some point, this is where I'm going to be, right? This is the next move. And the more you learn or the more you're in it, you realize, be where your feet are, make good relationships, make connections, treat people right. And then that kind of led me to my interview with you. And I remember talking to the staff at Penn saying, listen, I want some recruiting experience. I want an opportunity to, have a little bit more leadership. And I remember reaching out to you, Coach, and I'm like, like I was nervous. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, this is a high profile program. Even though we hear, oh, some people are Division 1 or bust, but I'm like, this is a legit Division 3 school. I used to call it the minor league club when we played you guys, because you always did things right and it was professionally done. And then obviously I had the chance to work there for 11 months specifically, and and then I had told myself, I said, I'll never be a volunteer again, right? Even though I was making forget about the short chunk of change I was making, I felt like it was the world, right? It was good opportunities to go recruit and do my thing. And then I had an opportunity to go to Penn State. So it's one of those things where I'm super thankful for those 11 years of coaching in the dugout. And it's kind of made me, who I still am today.
I think it I think it provides a very important foundation, for every coach, young or old. And I thought, for you, you're certainly a very talented young man that I respected immensely. I remember sitting down with you, and I'm not really an interview guy. I just like to have a conversation. And you're like, yeah, we're playing a pro team today. I'm like, so, looking back as I think about that, there was really, the straight lines concept came out within the last year or so in my head, and it's going to be quite the brand, I think. And really, you kind of subliminally, hey, there's some straight lines at the sales, I think, more, maybe more so with me. And I thought that was, looking back, I'm like, that's kind of what he meant. We had some straight lines, we were trying to do things the right way and treat people the right way. And, I think we ended up with 25 different guys going on to coach somewhere else, which is one of the responsibilities I've brought on too. I thought it was just as important to push you along as the players. But the overriding theme of all that is a network, right? Networking is huge, and it's something that you, as a young guy, really developed early on. People respect you; they love you, buddy, and as do I. And everybody, so excited for the things you do. But maybe touch on how important for folks listening out there, especially young coaches, how important it is the network. I always say, you know, get to know as many people as you can, but the other side of that equation is get them to know you as well.
Hmm.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's big, and with that comes boots on the ground, right? And one of the things that I was big on when I was younger was if I wasn't on a field, if I wasn't reaching out to a player, if I wasn't reaching out to a coach, well, then I'm going to have the assumption that nobody knows who I am, nobody knows the program that I'm recruiting for, and I want to be able to promote that program as best as possible, and that boots on the ground mentality for me was especially at the sales, and I mean. You probably knew it. I don't even know if you did, but I was in the office very, very late. It was a lot of late nights where it was perfect. I didn't have, I think I just started dating now my wife, but she was kind of doing her own thing. I was doing mine. I think for young coaches, that's great. If you have a support staff or a spouse or a girlfriend that understands the role that you're not going to be around a lot. I think it was probably on, it might have been our first date. We talk about straight lines. It was pretty straight. Or I said, listen, I don't make a lot of money and I'm going a lot. Okay, so it is what it is, and it was perfect. My wife completely loved that, and she appreciated the grind. So that's what we did. But you just had to be boots on the ground. You had to. One thing I got that was really good. This is actually from Coach Mike Santella when I was at UPenn. Was he always knew all the players everywhere, the recruits, different areas, Texas, here, there. And I'm like, gosh, how do you memorize all of these names? Well, a lot of it wasn't just about memorizing, it was getting to know them, right? Getting to know the coaches, the travel ball coaches, the high school coaches. So when I got to DeSales, it was nice where we could still recruit even out of state. But I had to say, listen, I at least got to have, a good footprint on the Lehigh Valley area, right? The coaches, and it's awesome. Some of those I still have connections with. And so I said, if I got to have the footprint on this, smaller area, then we can expand out. And that's something that I really think helps you along the game, because those, if you do it right, those connections, they're going to follow you wherever you go.
Well, I agree, 100%. I think relationships, after all our time on earth and everything we do, what we're left with is friendships and relationships and, people that you love to death, that you're willing to do anything for them, which you are one of those guys. Um, and I think young guys out there, especially, they're trying to find their way, you know, don't be fake about it. Try to make sincere contacts and connections. And older guys like me of vintage age sometimes will look right through you. We won't tell you, but we're like, okay, maybe not for me, but you're making an impression talking, if you're working at a camp, or somebody's always talking about you, good, bad, or indifferent. So hopefully more good than ever. All right, so we left Penn State, right? That was the last college stop, and then the graveyard mentality began, or was there something in between there? I don't think
Yes.
so.
Yeah, so it was 2019. I decided, because then I had gotten married, and I said, you know what? I've never really lived full time with my wife. She was in school, she was in business school. I was doing my thing coaching, and I was like, something tells me, I feel like God is kind of putting something on my heart to say, maybe this is it. Maybe there's something else for you. And it was an interesting scenario. I was the volunteer for the first 2 years there with Rob Cooper, who was phenomenal. He let me work, let me do my job. And then I was fortunate to get promoted, for the last 2 years. So it was like, hey, this is where we're gonna be. But it doesn't always work out that way. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna leave and kind of move. We moved back towards the outskirts of Philadelphia. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any opportunities. I said, I'm always big on, if you're good at what you do, you'll always have some sort of job, right? It might not be what you want to do at that moment, but you'll have a job, right? That'll be fine. And it also kind of helped for me because I didn't start from much. So it wasn't like, hey, I've been used to making $7,000 a year before. I've been used to doing that and kind of working my way up. So I was fine to do the same. And I started doing some private training. I started doing, graveyard mentality it was started in 2017 with Penn State. So I said, you know what, I'll just do private training for hitting and this and that. And then it was like light bulb, let me start training outfielders here in the outskirts of Philadelphia area. So I did that, and then COVID hit like about 6 months later. So I kind of said, well, there's a lot of disadvantages with COVID, but let's find an advantage. Unfortunately, but fortunately for me, a lot of teams and programs were shut down. I was in the mix of kind of helping out Swarthmore again a little bit, and they were shut down for 2 years. So I was like, I just got to get myself on the field, keep going, keep going. So I took that time to train players privately, trained a couple teams, and then also USA Baseball reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to be involved with our 18U national team?" And I'm like, "This is nuts! What's going on? I feel like I'm starting an entrepreneurship here." Now USA Baseball is reaching out, so that was kind of 2020 to 2021.
That's a great story. On that, that's right. You were with USA Baseball. Still do some stuff with that, correct? When they call.
Yeah, yeah, correct. So 18U. So I've been fortunate to be in that room where we make the final cuts for the 18U national team, the 15U national team, and then do some developmental stuff with them. And it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of pinch yourself and you say, "Oh, I never expected that I would be in this room." But then you got to say, "Wait a minute, no, you." This is, if you look back to the years of being a substitute teacher to make ends meet, in Philadelphia, and the years of working late in the office, it's like, oh, this is exactly what was supposed to happen. We just don't know when it's going to happen.
That's unbelievable. I always said the good Lord puts eyes in front of your head to see where you're going, not to learn, but don't dwell on where you've been. And when the good Lord is guiding you amazingly, what super opportunities. I wanted to touch base. Obviously, I have a lot of confidence in what you do. You always handle yourself so well. So, where has this path led you across the country right now? I know you've been everywhere and anywhere, and maybe share with us, some of the places graveyard mentality now is.
Yeah, so when I started, and I say we, my wife, Shantae, we work on that together. So we have been. What we said was, let's create something. No one cares about outfield play the way I'm going to care about it, right? You're not going to find anybody that's going to debate with you about whatever outfield movement there is, as we see maybe in the hitting world, right? So I said, this is perfect. This is a perfect opportunity to start a brand, to start something that really doesn't exist. And if it did exist, it doesn't exist to the level that I feel like I can make it. So we started off doing training camps in the state that I lived in, Pennsylvania. Well, we said, well, you know what? If we're going to make this thing really good and before it gets better, we got to move. We got to relocate. So we said, hey, it makes sense. We had our first child. Like, we want to be in warmer climate. We feel like we can get a lot of players here. We moved to Atlanta. Perfect. So now we're doing camp in in 2 states, right? And I said, wait, not everybody can get to Atlanta. Parents, the fees the money's running out. They do travel ball, they do this, they do that. So I said, we got to make this possible for more. And we turned that into now doing training camps in physically now 11 states: Pennsylvania, Arizona, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, um, Florida. So we have 11 states, and we're working on the 12th. Illinois is in there. The 12th is going to be the Arizona. We haven't physically done one there yet, but we feel like we've got a pulse on it. It'll be our 12 states, 12 states of outfield training. We go to them at minimum, twice a year. So the other thing I kind of look at too is I've always wanted to have a family, right? I always wanted to have a family, but I always want to coach. I tell myself I'm going to coach forever at some capacity. How can I match this blend with my profession and a family? So I've never experienced California a ton. And we had a chance to have training camp out there for USA Baseball and San Juan Capistrano. And I'm like, wow, dude from North Philly is in beautiful Southern California. So I started to think, wait a minute, we've got this graveyard idea. We need to have camp here, and my family's going to come out. We're going to make a vacation every year. So what I tried to do, and I don't, people probably don't really know this, but I have camps in areas where the family can explore and visit Disneyland in California, or we go to Tampa because I have family that lives in Tampa, and then it's only an hour from Disney World in Orlando. I wanted to, and my kids are still young, but I want it to be something where when my son is old enough, he can come participate in camp. We can make a vacation out of it, and baseball doesn't take over my family's life, so to speak. So that's the goal. We're about 2.5 years into our full swing with all of these 11 to 12 states, and that's kind of going to be our niche from there.
You are an inspiration to everybody, young man. I mean, I'm really, really excited to have you. Very proud of you.
Thanks.
Since 1909, visiting here with Andre Butler of Graveyard Mentality. Since 1909, Baseball Blue Book has been the trusted directory for MLB scouts, and today it's grown into the most comprehensive platform in the game. But it's not just for players and coaches, it's for businesses too. Inside the Baseball Blue Book app, companies can create full profiles, promote their products or services, and even build private groups to connect directly with baseball players, parents, and coaches. Whether you're offering training, equipment, nutrition, or any service that touches the game, you now have a direct pipeline to the baseball community. Think of it as LinkedIn meets baseball, searchable, filterable, and open to everyone. No barriers, no gatekeeping. If your business wants to stand out, it's time to get in the book. Download Baseball Blue Book today from Apple or Google Play. Back here again with Andre Butler of the Graveyard Mentality. So we want to get in some of the nitty gritty. I just was thinking as you're talking outfield play, nobody's gonna contest you. No. So I remember converting some infielders to outfielders. Coach, I never played the outfield before. I said, well, it's not that hard. I said, let me tell you it this way. This is what I know. The ball's in the air, you catch it, that's good. The ball's in the air and it hits the ground, that's bad. And when you get your hand on the ball, look for somebody with two arms in the air and throw them the ball. So and I know not as much as you, but there's so much more than that. So where'd that idea come? Obviously, fly balls, right? I mean, it's a graveyard out there. You were a hell of an outfielder. We've had our share at DeSales, and we're getting to watch them in pro ball all the time. So that's the graveyard. Balls go there to die. I get it, but is that kind of where it all came from?
Yeah, it really came from a practice, right? I think as coaches, you always have a chance to reflect on how you're doing based off of how your players are playing and how they're obtaining the information or lack thereof. And it was a time at Penn State where things just seemed really dull. I didn't enjoy maybe the past couple practices. There was something that we needed, but it couldn't be. I wasn't looking for just fluff to throw out there, and I needed something that made sense. So it was about seven of us. We came. It was graveyard mentality. Like this is where hits are going to be laid to rest, and and then and then I started to realize because I think I was only about 26 or 7 at the time, and I still was realizing that, oh, hey, coach is kind of asking me to play some infielders in the outfield. You'd always get another project. Outfield coaches are the one coach that's going to get many projects at any level, any level. And if we're recruiting the right players, which are athletes, right? We want to recruit athletes. If we're recruiting the right players, outfield is going to get a lot of opportunities for players who have never played before. Shortstops, who are just when they go out to the outfield, they're super quick getting to the ball. You got to tell them to slow down, but they kind of already have the mentality because they're so used to the ball being close to them and action. So I just realized the big need that a lot of these players aren't going to have. And that's why the biggest thing I'm on is mentality, right? Yes, there's skill set, there's drills, there's fundamentals, but you can't have all fundamentals. At some point, you got to have a mentality that says, I deserve to be out here. I can go get this ball. I'm confident, as Rob Cooper used to always say to our team, if you've got 70%, give me 100% of whatever you have, right? Give me 100% of that 70%. And that's what it has to be, So we kind of train them, get them trained up like dogs and have you got your top dog and everybody follow him and he's the example. And that's where it's come about. It's been awesome because now I have some really cool stories of players like Zion Rose who plays at Louisville and he went there as a catcher, but the kid looks like Bo Jackson at the same time. He's fast, he's strong, it's going to help him to play multiple positions, so he's transitioned to left field and him and I have formed a great relationship just off of outfield play. So I kind of seek players that are transitioning out there. One, because I like to challenge myself as a coach to say, let me work with you to see where we can get this thing. And then I can go take that example to a younger kid who's maybe just in high school and maybe doesn't want to play the outfield and say, look at these guys who have come before you, right? You see the Mookie Betts of the world. You see the Bryce Harpers of the world who can go back and forth because they're athletes. It's possible, right? Even if it's not their level, it's possible to do it.
Athleticism is critical, right? I mean, I've many infielders I've turned into outfielder. In fact, in the World Series year 2003, we had five infielders in the game: second, short, third, left, and center. They were all infielders. But I think for young kids that are out there today, if you can be an athlete, you can do some things. We can teach you how to play, especially you as an outfield coach, and you're so much more than that. But you can be taught some of these fundamentals, but if you have some inherent skill to you, you can go ahead and, you know, kind of be successful early on so you learn the nuances of, you know, counts and pitches and what's this guy got and, spray charts and all those great data points and analytics that have inundated the game kind of accelerated my departure, all that stuff. Where's the gut feel? we're like Aaron Boone the other day in the Yankees series. Oh, come on, man, the Max Fried was pretty good, ex Atlanta Brave. So that stuff to me is really baseball, and we use the other stuff to help. I mean, that's how that should all go. Um, anything unexpected that you might have learned or kind of popped up? It's like, oof, maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe the train got off the tracks. Maybe the lines weren't quite as straight as I hoped them to be. Anything that pops in your mind for that?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if it was really, I guess it was unexpected because you don't know what to expect when you go to different states. So the cool thing about it is there's not one state that has the same culture and where we go to training camp, right? We call it training camp because it kind of gives a bit of an emphasis on what we're doing. When we come to Georgia, here in Georgia, it's sometimes a little too serious, right? These guys, I'm like, guys, relax, come on, like, can we joke a little bit? Too serious. When we go to Maryland, it's really laid back, right? It's a good culture. Everybody knows each other, really laid back. When we go to California, it's SoCal, right? It's still Vegas vacation.
Really
So
laid back.
it's it teaches me, and I tell all of the players this when we start camp. Like, this is our culture, this is what it is. But for me, it makes me, and as coaches, we kind of have a little bit of like bipolar in this already anyway. You show up to practice one day, you got to go on your guys and be a little hard on them because they need it. But for me, as I go to different states, I have to realize who needs what, and how I approach. I'm still an aggressive coach. I still demand, a certain level, a certain standard, but I also have to realize I'm coming into your culture a little bit, right? This is the culture of whatever state we're in, and I'm going to meet you where you are, but I got to find the best ways possible to get you as close as possible to my standard, and I have to do it within. I have 8 hours to do it. We have training camp for 4 hours a day, so a 2-day camp, 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on a Sunday, and I have to do it as soon as I can so that we can start obtaining the information. And that's the big one for me is once they get a feel for the environment, it's more like a big league feel where you're going to get your work in. We might crack a joke here or there and get right back to work. Um, that's probably been the biggest thing that is the unexpected, but I enjoy it because it's always a different day at work. Every training camp provides something different. And I guess maybe the other unexpected was starting off with like softball, which I think is more of I guess just God's timing because I have a daughter, right? So she loves playing. Like, she every day she's like, baseball time. When I come home from work, she's like, Daddy came home from baseball. That's all she knows. Um, so it's cool starting into softball and now saying, how do those young ladies like to be coached? And based off the different states, some of them like they want to be challenged. I remember my first time running a softball camp. They were like, "Hey, like we want more. Like, you got to be more aggressive." I'm like, "Sorry, like I wanna, it's a different space learning the sport." So for the past couple years, I've now transitioned into both baseball and softball, but it's cool because I feel like I can coach it the same to both sports.
Visiting here with Andre Butler of the Graveyard Mentality. We're going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics and the logistics of those weekends, those 4-hour sessions on each day in baseball, softball. In the meantime, in every workplace and every team, there are unseen forces that can derail success. In my book, Team Killers, I uncover the behaviors, attitudes, and habits that destroy chemistry and show you how to build a winning culture instead. If you're a leader, coach, or teammate who wants lasting success, this book is your playbook. Get your copy of Team Killers today and protect your team from the inside out. Available at CoachNeiman.com or Amazon. Back with Andre Butler here in the middle of session 2. Um, you've touched on a bunch of subjects, and you talk now about softball, which we're going to talk about as well. Those 2-day sessions are 4 hours each. How many kids typically, average in a session?
Typically, we're at about 20 to 30 players. I've got staff there as well too. Georgia camps, I've got a lot more staff here, so they can spike up to about 40. Um, but we'll have four coaches, and it's actually been cool to connect with some other coaches to kind of help with this. And I take the team mentality is like I don't. It's a reason why it's not called Andre Butler Baseball Academy. I'm slowly but surely trying to make sure that a young man or young lady at camp has a good coaching experience with one of our staff members that is a better experience than me, right? Like, because maybe they spent more time in that drill and that coach was that good. And you should have a better experience with that coach if I was all the way over here, not, spending as much time. So the curriculum is all the same and the mentality is all the same. So in order for it to grow to where I want it, it's nice to have some help.
I think the biggest obstacle now is to grow it to so softball, we have kind of the same. Would you let's say would you go into a state into Texas or something and be on the same weekend? You knock out the baseball in the morning and softball. That's you are and I am when it comes to camp. But that's kind of a thought, I guess.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
your thought on challenges, growth, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you know me too well. So there's 24 hours in a day. And if it is a trip where my family is not going, we got to utilize that time as best as possible because I got to get back home to play husband and wife. I'm sorry, husband and dad. So that is very, very important. So usually, like for California camp, we'll do the boys early, and I'm gonna make a knock at the boys here because it's amazing to do the boys early and the girls afterwards. I'll say this for females, their attention to detail just seems to be a lot better, right? Their engagement just seems to be a lot better, especially when you get to like the teenage years where in high school, like they'll engage, they'll ask questions and so on and so forth. And then you get the boys and they just it's kind of too cool for school sometime. So I like that balance that we have. And it's great. Yeah. So we do 4 hours, and then we'll do 30 minutes for registration. At that time, I'm probably like scarfing down a sandwich, and then we'll get right back to it. So it's about 9 hours a day of training camp.
Figured that's what you were doing. The camp, man, so many years I ran camps and had great people like you. We were talking to somebody the other day. It's like a who's who of guys that, actually work camp, whether it was a holiday camp or, summer or whatever. But again, it goes back to those relationships, even including a guy like Tom Walter, who's an awesome guy. He was at the sales doing holiday pitching camp, that kind of stuff when he was a young coach at George Washington at the time. So everybody's trying to make ends meet. And I think it's interesting what you say about the girls. I had a granddaughter just graduated from University of Albany, and I know when I worked with her personally, much more attentive and you know dialed into what you were trying to say. She did great at Albany, a tremendous career, but it was almost pleasurable at times where you didn't get the feedback like, "What do you know? What are you talking about?" Well, let me go show you. When you get a little older, you can't really show them as well. So I
Right.
wish you well. I think it's a great opportunity, and you might find down the road that might even be, grow even more. That's really special on your end. I think it's going to do very, very well. Anybody misunderstand what you're trying to do? Or like, well, you're nuts, Andre. There's no way you can pull this off. Anybody out there that, the naysayers?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool. So we have a opportunity to have we have like a partnership with Drexel University in Philadelphia with an internship. So it's during their co-op program. It's their class for the semester, and they technically work with graveyard mentality. So they are able to promote our business, and they come across a lot of naysayers. So when they get one, they get a family or a parent that's like, outfield training, why do I need this? And I always enjoy getting on the phone with any family, but especially a family that doesn't understand. My goal is to specifically say, and this isn't to be cocky, but it's unfortunately just what it is. Where listen, I'm going to tell you about the product. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Here's a level of how we do it. And I want them to hear my passion behind it. I want them to hear a little bit of my background. I'll tell them I'm from North Philadelphia. I said, You're not going to find a lot of people from North Philadelphia that are doing outfield training camps, let alone coaching baseball. So I probably know what I'm doing. Right. And then I said, Listen, I just wanted to be able to present you the opportunity. And if it's something you're not interested in, that's totally fine. But for me personally, I don't want a softball player or a baseball player to get to the point of graduating high school and not ever hearing about us. That's the big thing, right? So I'm okay getting the naysayers, the folks that are like, yeah, it's okay, we don't need this. I'm totally fine getting turned down. Been turned down many times in my life. Uh, but what makes me feel comfortable when I lay my head on my pillow at night is how many people know what we're doing, and at least give them an opportunity to say, "That's great, but it's just not for me." That's kind of what I'm big on, because I think if we get it out to as many people as possible, we'll be able to affect a lot of folks, not only just their lives and their mentality, but obviously their outfield training.
That's great stuff. They're visiting here with the great, the great Andre Butler of Graveyard Mentality. Baseball Blue Book has been the game's trusted directory since 1909, and now it's where businesses connect directly with players, parents, and coaches. Create a profile, promote your services, and join the community. Download Baseball Blue Book today on Apple or Google Play and follow along with me inside the app in my Straight Lines group. Uh, Andre, it's just been a pleasure so far. And with the last segment here, we'll get into some more kind of cool stuff, have some fun. You already shared one story of the young man that was a catcher and has become a pretty good outfielder. And Louisville, I think, was the
Yes,
school,
Louisville.
correct? They're not bad, huh? They're not
No,
bad. I had a chance to see the ballpark one year, flew into Louisville for a wedding in Cincinnati. And I walked in there running summer camp. It's hot as you know what. And they're doing the same stuff you and I did. It's the same stuff, dropping bases in the corners and playing games, and it's the same stuff. It's pretty interesting how that goes by. So, any other things like even a kid that maybe wasn't as talented or successful on the field, maybe you've impacted a life or two, which I'm sure you have off the field. Anybody stand out?
Yeah, this was actually a kid that we moved to Atlanta, and Ellis Schwartz was attending Emory University at the time, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to be." He was actually our first ever intern. He was like, "Hey, I'd love to be your intern." I'm like, "I didn't even know we can have interns, right?" And this kid just saw what we were doing, and he would show up to our training camps in the evening. Mind you, he was a college player, a college student at a really good academic school, and he showed up, he put his time in, and I just was able to form a relationship with him, watch him grow. He ends up at George Washington playing baseball there for 2 years, getting another degree from there, and now he's playing independent ball. So he'd be one, because I think we all need people that believe in us, right? But I think it's really cool to get a person that's younger than me, that's a player, that saw something in me and the brand and said, without saying it, but said, I believe in you and I want to be a part of this. That really motivated me. And it certainly, formed a relationship for life. So he'd certainly be one of them. And then, I really think, though this is kind of more so anybody that I've had a chance to work with on staff. I think those relationships, that's advice I'll give to any coach out there. You kind of you get into the moments of you just kind of go day in day out. You see your staff members, your pitching coach, your head coach, and like you really do need to value that time, because you're not going to get it back. Like it's very rare you're going to be able to go on a vacation with old members of your staff until maybe you guys retire or something. But I really just value anybody who I've worked with, whether it been at Penn State, DeSales, UPenn, like the knowledge that they have been able to give me and the ability to let me work and have confidence in me. So just really all those individual relationships I've been able to make along the way.
How about how young do you accept kids for camp? And I'm sure, go ahead,
Yeah.
age wise.
Yeah, as so on the website it says age 10. But it said so it's usually age 10 to 18. So what we do is we have two groups. We'll have our younger group and then we'll have our older group. I'll explain the drill, everything we're going to do, and then we break off and compete within our age groups. But we get these kids, and this is always cool. We get these players that are really into baseball, and they'll be 8 years old, 9 years old, and the parents, because we have in parentheses, we say if your child does not meet the age requirement, please reach out as we will take it on case by case. And the parent will reach out and say, hey, he plays up, and I know everybody plays up, but they say he's really, really into it. So I always let them know, as long as he can hold his own, as long as he can compete, we'd love to have him, right? Because this way I want folks to know what you're signing up for. This ain't day camp. We eat a quick lunch break. It's get your food in. It's just like a double header of a baseball game, right? Get your food in you, about 15, 20 minutes. Let's get back out there and get some training in. Um, and it's really been great to have some young players involved. And I always take as many pictures as I can because you're able to follow that success or that track story. You see them at this age, and next thing you know, they're taller than you. So that's the cool thing about having those young guys.
And I'm sure they look up to you, Andre. I'm sure they like this guy is, I can't wait to be him someday, perhaps. I'm sure they look up to you. They get camp t-shirt or I'm sure you have your own merchandise going
But we do have
as
our
well.
own merchandise on the website. We're not at the point yet where the camp includes a T-shirt, but I'm sure at some point we're getting there. But it's awesome to where we're actually rolling out some new merchandise here coming out this fall. But I do it so that if someone's wearing that T-shirt in an airport, right, and people immediately, not they just say, "Hey, we know the association," they immediately know what style of player that player has, right? They know that mentality that the player has. And I look at all the big brands out there, not just baseball companies, but stores that we shop at all the time. And at some point, that was it. Like whenever that store came out, people were like, "Yes, have you gone there? It's brand new." And that's what I want Graveyard to be. I want when people show up to, a travel game and you've got that skull head on there, even if it's not the Graveyard skull head, I want someone to actually mistakenly think, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was a Graveyard mentality shirt." So that's kind of how I stand behind the brand and keep us moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think if I were you, I would get a camp T-shirt on all those kids
Oh
when
yeah.
they come. Make a deal somewhere. They don't have to be crazy. You don't want it to, bring down the value of the website, which I'm going to answer for in a sec. But I think I've always put T-shirts on those kids, and they were $5, $6. You know what? The advertising, as you just mentioned, is priceless. It's
Yeah.
priceless, and you've got a good logo. It's a good brand. People look at us like, man, I don't play baseball, but I love that T-shirt. Right? I'm going to get me one of those,
Yeah.
and that's how it works. The website where people can get some merchandise is
Yep, so it's gonna be graveyardmentality.com. You'll see all of our, apparel there, as well as camps there, all services that we provide and things that we're doing in the baseball world.
visiting with Andre Butler, the great Andre Butler of Graveyard Mentality, building his own legacy. When the game is over, what will people remember about you? My book, What is Your Legacy? Challenges leaders, athletes, and everyday people to think beyond the scoreboard. It's about purpose, impact, and the mark you leave on others. If you're ready to define your legacy and live it with intention, this book will guide the way. Get your copy of What is Your Legacy today and start shaping the story only you can tell. So available at Coach Neiman and Amazon.com. Last part of this tremendous you know, gathering here with Andre. I just love the man and so impressed with what he's doing. Let's kid checks in, and yep, Tim Neiman from Center Valley. Look like you are mixing a salad a little bit. Might have to definitely be a corner guy. Maybe we'll move you to first. But anyway, checks in, and then that 4-hour day. Quickly, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we start off with more of our like mentality check. I kind of give a little introduction about what we look for. We ask for energy and we ask for effort. Those are two things I always say at the start of camp. I tell them straight up too, like it's not necessarily about how good you are, but if you can work hard and you can hustle and you can have your thinking cap on to learn, you're gonna have a good camp and get a lot from it. And then we kind of break up into I'm big on making sure we're not just doing drills that the level of the drill needs to be somewhat competitive. So we don't want to burn kids all day and like you don't catch anything. But if you're catching, I tell our staff, like if they're catching every ball, well, like let's make it harder. We have some parents who are investing in this and who also are traveling. Some of them drive 6 hours and do crazy things in flights. I'm like, we have to give these people more than what they actually pay for. So let's give them that. So it goes through that. We do, line a couple drills that are big for us or playing type of plays where line drives, balls at the wall. And when I say line drives, like I'm hitting the fungo at something that is reasonably challenging off the bat. I love hitting the ball off the tee to get that realistic spin at the trajectory that's going to be in for the game. Balls at the wall, most kids are just nervous to get it at the wall because, I mean, think about it. 8U, you don't have a chance to rob a lot of home runs, right? So the ball's not hit out there too often. So we got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Communication, right? It's a big one, especially in the era of our younger people where you can't just text, hey, ball, 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 or hey, I'm going to take it. So we have to get our kids talking. So it really, all the drills we do kind of at some point spiral back to just normal life, right? Life um, goals and things we're going to need. So at the end of it, I think, and I like for the parents to think about it like, wait a minute, this guy is crazy. He just used the position of outfield play to teach my son all the things we've been trying to work on at home, with communication and working as a team.
Yeah, a lot of parents do that. It's amazing how smart the parents become when the kids are like, yours are going to go through the same thing from ages like 15 to 25. Mom and dad, yeah, we got all the answers.
Yeah.
Then they turn 25. It's like, boy, my parents are pretty smart.
Yeah.
They're pretty smart. Would you agree I mean, watching Outfielders and now broadcasting AAA games with the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, I think the hardest ball for an outfielder is that backspun ball usually right at the center fielder with no height. There's no depth perception. And you see a lot of guys that have first step in, which may have probably any step in on those, there's no good.
You're
I
beat.
think typically, and I might be wrong, you try to squat maybe or get below to try to get the depth perception and then react from there. You still might not get it, but that is a heck of a tough ball to read. Is that what would you think?
It is. And what I tell a lot of parents and players are we're seeing the ball hit now harder, faster than we've ever seen before. Right? These players are now lifting and they're stronger than they've ever been before at a young age. However, are we necessarily getting faster? Maybe a little bit, but no human can outrun a baseball. And I always try to relate it to this. I said, hey guys at camp, I said, you see, what's the speed limit when you come into the facility? Usually it's around 20, 25 miles an hour, right? Typically where we are. I say, can anybody run here at 25 miles an hour? Okay, that looks slow for a car moving, right? Okay, now bump that up another 70 miles an hour to get to 90 or so or 100, which you get up to the upper levels. You can't outrun it. So it allows the player to say, wow, my reads do have to be crisp. They do have to be clean. We talk a lot about trust in everything you see. If your body's telling you to go in one direction, you're probably right. But trust and then adjustment because we are human and we're going to make mistakes. And don't you dare quit until the game's over. So that's a lot what we talk about to those guys.
That's awesome. If I was 100 years younger, I'd sign up for camp. I might try to drop 100, drop a couple hundred lbs as well. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. Um, so, let's, and I know maybe you haven't thought about it a lot, maybe you have. 5 years, 10 years, where does this all land down the down the road for Andre Butler?
Yeah, so I mean, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I've got a great staff, and and I know they're going to continue to grow and do exceptional things. And I gotta go with family first because 5 years, 10 years, my kids are 8, 9, they're starting to get older and they have their own games. And if we're in 12 different states, we're not going to go from 12 to 8. We're only going to go from 12 to more. So, down the road, it's going to look like, you're not going to know if I'm at camp or not, and you won't be able to tell. And then that product's going to remain the same as well, too. So within these 5 years, there's going to be a lot of training, a lot of deep-rooted conversations with different staff members that are like, if you want to be in charge of our North Carolina area, which we have that at the USA Baseball Complex, like we run 3 to 4 events there a year. It could very well be something that you can do and have a footprint on, because I want this to be in a position where, like, we have this amazing Straight Lines podcast. I want someone else in 5 years to be able to be interviewed and then talk about their success, because if it's only just me, I mean, like you mentioned, like at some point we all wash away. We're all gone. And I always think, what type of legacy can I leave, whether it be for my kids, for my former players? I think that's the cool thing about it is there's been a handful of players who I've coached, whether they've attended our camp or I've coached them in college and said, hey, when baseball's done a long time from now, if you want to get into something, I'm working to have a job for you so that you don't have to crawl as much as I did. You can get to the point of at least sprinting.
I mean, that is an aspirational plan the way it should be. That's how you'll scale it, by having more Andre Butlers that you can train and trust throughout the country. And who's to say you wouldn't have somebody in every state in the United States, even the Alaska Collegiate League. Somebody goes up there in the summer when they can run camp 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For a couple of weeks or a month or however long that is. So,
Yeah.
that anything is possible, and you have, made all that possible. I mean, it's a pretty amazing story. Talked about softball, probably it, right? Nothing else on the horizon for you, from a growth standpoint,
Yeah.
other than scale
Yeah,
business.
there's softball. There's a little bit of recruiting advising that I do, which I kind of stumbled upon by an accident. You get to working with players, and they're like, you just kind of see parents that they don't understand what to do. They think they have to spend a bunch of money here, a bunch of money there. And as I continue to mention here, like, especially in high school, you only have so much time with your kid, and if you want to, everything, yeah, is about a business and this and that, but I think there's a way to budget it where, hey, we're still going on vacation even though you're a junior in high school, right? We can't throw everything away to baseball because it's a part of who you are, but it's not exactly who you are. It's a part of you, but it doesn't make you. And years from now, as a parent, you don't want to look back and say, "Man, I wish I would have went on that trip." So try to make it easier where there's direct connection with some coaches that I've built relationships with over the time. Super small, more mom and pop shop type of recruiting, where I only take on a certain amount of players rather than everybody that can dish out a check or so. But other than that, just, recruiting, softball, graveyard baseball for the camps, and then some private training here or there is really what I've got my hands in right now on the graveyard side.
And the recruiting's a challenge these days with the portal and NIL. It's another hour for you and me someday,
Sure.
how that's all going. I don't envy that process, anymore. And it's kind of sad in a lot of ways how that has all morphed into, what it is today. And I think guys like with backgrounds at a lot of different levels, can really give honest advice. And you would hope at the end of the day that that's what parents would want to hear. Please be honest with me. I think my kid can play at University of Texas, and deep down inside, it's like, they
Mm.
probably not. But doesn't mean there's not a school for you, and that's okay. I think so, and I think keeping it tight the way you are is really a good plan, rather than, why don't you serve the few the best you can, then, not be so good with the many, and it all washes out at the end. Well, my friend, it was an incredible conversation with my friend Andre Butler of Graveyard Mentality. I love how he reminded us that discipline, resilience, and mindset aren't just words, they're choices you have to make every single day. If today's episode inspired you, I know it did me, make you make sure to connect with Andre and check out everything he's building with Graveyard Mentality. Go to the website, you know, contact Andre directly, and I know him for a long time. He's going to respond. And if you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, share it with a friend or who could use a little motivation, inspiration, and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. And as always, keep building, keep moving forward, and keep those lines straight. Thank you very much. Andre, thank you so much, man. You were outstanding. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.